Matilda and Clifford had been married 55 years. If you were able to get Clifford off by himself, he would tell you those 55 years seemed more like 155 years. Matilda was a nagger. Nag, nag, nag. It didn't matter what the situation was, Matilda told people what to do and how to do it. If they were in a restaurant, Matilda would tell Clifford which utensil to use and when and how to use it. When the server brought the food to their table, she would tell the server how to serve, from which side to serve which items, and how to place it on the table properly. Oftentimes, she would summon the chef out of the kitchen and tell him he used too much spice in something or not enough in something else. Matilda and Clifford went on a vacation trip to Jerusalem. They'd always wanted to tour the Holy Land. While in Jerusalem, walking the Via Dolorosa, Matilda stumbled, fell, and suddenly died. When Clifford met with the undertaker was very kind, very compassionate, as he counseled Clifford concerning his options. He explained, Matilda could be shipped back home to the USA, but it will cost over $10,000. Or he could have Matilda buried right there in the Holy Land, and it would only cost $350. Clifford didn't even think about the options. He said right away, oh, I want Matilda shipped back home. The undertaker said, I don't understand. Why are you willing to spend over $10,000 to have Matilda shipped back home when you could have her buried right here in this marvelous Holy Land? It would only cost you $350. Clifford explained, surely you of all people know the story. It happened right here in Jerusalem. Some years ago, a man died, was buried. 3 days later, he rose from the dead. Okay. Now, you and I receive counsel, advice, every day of our lives. Some counsel we accept. Some advice we take and agree with. Others, like Clifford, we completely reject. Some years ago, newspapers carried the story about a young man riding a bus from Chicago to Miami. While he was sitting at the Atlanta stopover lunch counter, a woman came out of the restroom carrying a tiny baby. She walked up to him and said to this young man, would you hold my baby? I think I left my purse in the restroom. Naturally, he agreed. As the woman turned and walked away, she headed toward the front door of the bus station. As this young man watched, he saw this woman dart out the door and immediately get lost in the crowd. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe what was happening. He rushed to the door, did not see this woman anywhere. What should he do? Put the baby down and run? When his heart calmed, he went to the Traveler's Aid booth, and together with the local police, the real mother was located. The woman who had given him the baby had stolen the child about 2 or 3 days before. This young man breathed a great sigh of relief when the real mother was found. After all, what was he going to do with the baby? Every year, the season of Advent, which begins today, confronts each of us with that question. Every Advent, every Christmas season, God Himself walks up to us and says, will you hold my special child? What are we going to do with this child we call the Christ child? What are we going to do with this special baby? In fact, who is this special child? All throughout the Bible, there are many titles Many names given to this special infant. Isaiah the prophet describes the coming Messiah, Jesus, as the great light, who will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, Christ the King. Today, we focus on Jesus as the Wonderful Counselor. What are we going to do with a counselor? What kind of counselor do we want? Has anybody ever told you where to go? Sure they have. There's always somebody who's waiting to tell us where to go. Some counselors provide advice, direction, suggestions. High school guidance counselors enable young people to decide whether or not college would be a viable option for them, or should they seek some other avenue to their future. It's a crazy world in which you and I live, a rather confusing world. In his book, The Pursuit of Happiness, David Meyer explains that from 1957 to 1990, per capita income in the United States more than doubled. But the number of Americans who reported being happy remained about the same. All the advances in medical science, all the achievements in technology, all the increase in material wealth and prosperity did not supply us with an answer to our deepest yearnings, did not fulfill our deepest need. David Meyer says, "Never have we been so self-reliant or so lonely. Never have we seemed so free or our prisons so overcrowded. Never have we had so much education or such high rates of teen delinquency, despair, and suicide. Never have we been so sophisticated about pleasure or so likely to suffer broken or miserable marriages." You and I live in a confusing world. We need a guide we can depend upon. We need a guide who knows where to go, a guide who is willing to lead us there. About 5 or 6 years ago, Kay and I returned from a trip. We had utilized a park and fly hotel near Reagan International Airport. I vividly remember retrieving our car from the hotel garage and beginning our journey homeward enmeshed in the DC traffic. I'm a country boy, born and reared on a farm outside Bridgeville, Delaware. I don't like driving in the city, any city. I'm trying to watch, read every sign, watch the traffic. I see all those different ramps that go up and over and some that go down and under, and I'm trying to keep calm and collected. Kay, sitting beside me, is doing the same thing, watching signs, reading exits, trying to help me find that right road which will take us to the Bay Bridge and home. Somehow, I make a wrong turn, and I ended up where I was not supposed to be. In fact, that particular section of highway was closed to traffic. There was no traffic on this road at all except our vehicle, which should not have been there. By now I'm no longer calm, and I'm certainly not collected. I am frazzled, and my blood pressure has risen probably 30 points. I'm ready to abandon the car and leave it there and hitchhike the rest of the way home. As we sit there, contemplating our dilemma, trying to decide what we're going to do, up drives a patrol car. The officer stops on my side. I put my window down, and he begins to talk to me. Not pleasant conversation. He is angry. In fact, he's beyond anger. He is mad. I don't remember exactly what he said, but when he stopped talking, I said in reply, "Officer, I too am angry. I'm mad with myself. I don't know what I did to get where I'm not supposed to be. All I know is I want to go home." Instantly, his anger dissipated. He began to give me assurance, enabled me to calm down. Then he put those twirling lights on, and he said the magic words, "Follow me." And within 2 or 3 minutes, we were on the road headed to the Bay Bridge and home. There are times we need a guide we can depend upon. Where would you and I be without mentors, coaches, counselors, consultants, when we are engaged in some task that is way beyond our own personal expertise? There are times we don't need somebody to tell us where to go. We need somebody who is willing to go with us and to lead us where it is we need to go. I affirm to you this morning, the first Sunday in Advent, that Jesus is the kind of counselor, the kind of guide who leads us and who goes with us to where it is you and I need to be. In John's Gospel, Jesus says these marvelous words, "Don't let your hearts be troubled. In my Father's house, there are many rooms, many dwelling places. I go and prepare a place for you." I read a true story, supposedly true, about a test pilot who was flying a new fighter jet in bad weather. He's about to make his instrument approach to land. The air traffic controller inquired as to how much fuel he had on board. And the pilot said, "Oh, I've got plenty of fuel on board." Well, the controller explained, "We have a situation. There's a young pilot who is not instrument rated. He's lost in these dense clouds. Do you think you could intercept him and lead him back to the airport?" "Sure," the pilot responded. Within a matter of minutes, using his radar, he located the lost airplane. He pulled up beside this lost twin-engine aircraft, and he radioed the lost pilot to look left. When that lost pilot looked left, he saw beside him this huge fighter jet. And at that instant, he burst into tears because he thought his life was over. He was about to run out of fuel. He knew he was going to crash. And here was this fighter pilot beside him. Instantly, the fighter pilot said, "Don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. What I want you to do is do what I do. I'm going to pull in front of you, and I want you to follow." And again, very gently and very carefully, the two pilots made their way back to where they needed to be. At about 500 feet, they cleared the dense clouds, and the lost pilot looked down to see a marvelous sight. There in front of him was the airport, and he was all set up to land safely. Now today, the beginning of this marvelous season of Advent, is a good time to welcome Jesus Christ as the pilot of our lives. It's a good time to welcome Jesus Christ to give us counsel, to give us advice, to lead us through this earthly life, and ultimately into eternal life. I suggest to you that Jesus is a wonderful counselor.